I'm just going to say that I've met Marlin Jensen. I had lunch with him. I've met him several times. There's sort of this dark and light side to him that I've started to pick up on, because when you meet Marlin Jensen, you can't feel anything but love. He's like the most charitable, loving, eloquent, articulate, compassionate human. And I've never met a person that didn't feel that way about him. But to start a meeting that way, it's either the side of the devil or the side of truth. That's a very different human at that point. And he would have never said that to me in private. He would never have started a meeting that way in private. In private, he would have said, your questions are important. You're important. We value you. There's complexity here. There's nuance. And so it's almost like there's this public Marlin Jensen and this private Marlin Jensen. And what you experience at that point is a very different Marlin Jensen. And it's almost like he turns on the church official mode, but then when the camera's not on or the public isn't watching, he's able to switch to the private mode. And he's lovely in both senses, but that's a different human who would start a meeting that way. Am I wrong? Go ahead, Christina.
I felt like they were deliberately wasting time.
They were stalling.
Yes, they were. I asked Marlin Jensen later how they felt about the meeting and why they had come, and he said, "We were terrified for this meeting." So I think they just wanted the time to pass on.
So with the introduction, with Marlin Jensen's introduction, and then with everybody introducing themselves, what are you, an hour into the meeting now? Yeah. Okay. Anyone else want to talk about Marlin? Go ahead.
I just want to add that my impression from Marlin was just what you said. He was eloquent, and he very nice and polite. But what he said is basically what you've been taught in church every day. So he said that in a very loving tone, even though it just contradicts. But he never came across as threatening in any way. So I got a very good impression from him, even though he told us these things, because it was just, this is what you taught at church. And I kind of sensed and felt that, he had the area authority behind him, Kopishki. He didn't come across as nice. But I think it was just part of the package that he needed to do in order to have this meeting. I think you kind of sense that it was part of the package that he needed to present to us before getting into the questions. So after that hour, he just said, "Okay, let's get together and let's get some questions from you here." So then we just went around.
Can you say something, Peringa, really quick?
Yeah, no, I just would like to say that I think also he was very respectful in the meeting, and he treated us in a very, very respectful way. And my take of the meeting was that I actually got the confirmation that there were no answers.
We'll get to that at the end. Okay. So the introductions are done, and then they start by saying, "Let's collect questions." Is that right?
Yeah. So then it was open to anybody to raise their hands, and they just wrote down the question on a whiteboard, and then they didn't say.
A bunch of questions.
Yeah, and I think it turned out to be 12 or 13. But
tell us some of the questions.
I asked a few of myself, but one of the peepstone, the translation of the Book of Mormon was one, Polyandry was one, the Book of Abraham was one, Temple, history, the polygamy, big topics. DNA was there.
The Book of Abraham was also
really big topics. So it's impossible to cover that. So so that's why we just never got time to go around any of the topics really.
Okay, so each of you share reflections on the answers that were given. So we'll just pass the mic from person to person. Tell us one of the questions that was addressed and how you felt about their answer. And we could just take turns. So Hans, pick one of the questions that they tried to answer. Tell us what your memory was of the answer and how you felt about their answer.
My question that I remember quite well is the polygamy, and if the church still believe in it. And after asking him 4 times about the same question, he said that we believe in it.
So how was he obfuscating? So you asked, do we still believe in polygamy? And the answer would be what?
He said he would say, we don't practice it. And I said, well, but do we believe in it? We don't practice it. Yes. And I said, and he said, you know what I mean? And I said, no, I don't know what you mean. But as I also said, I have a friend in Kungsbacka there. His wife died, and he married again in the temple. And he had 2 wives sealed to him. And I asked, what do you call that? And he said, we don't practice it. And I said, well, are you not allowed to say the word? And then I said, well, yeah, we believe in it. So
eventually he agreed.
Yeah.
Now, Jensen had hoped that you would help them. Didn't you start out, say something very early on that would have sent Jensen the message that you weren't sort of on his side at the early in the meeting? Is that right?
Yeah, I think you remember that. I gave it to the sweet lady here.
Thank you. I remember Elder Jensen saying to Hans, I'm so relieved that you are here because you will help us, something like that, he said. And Hans said, me? I just want the truth. That's what you said.
And Jensen slouched.
He backed off. Yeah,
he would have backed off. Okay, other people want to share their reflections on questions that were addressed.
I have 2 very distinct memories. One was questions about LGBT. And we had one person giving her very strong emotions about this. Her sister was married to another woman, and they were all thrown out of the church. And now she hears this. Polyandry, 14-year-old ones. But her sister is authoress. What's the word?
So
like
why was Joseph allowed to marry other men's wives, to have 30
and
wives, but her sister, who had one female partner, was being kicked out of the church and
she was very strong and very emotional.
And what was their answer that you remember?
I don't remember any reaction from them. What could they say?
Yeah.
And I also remember, I think that the only time that they were aggressive, and that's probably against me, that's why I remember it. I asked the question about lying for the Lord. And
what did you ask? What about it?
I said that during my mission I was learned the important principle, lying for the Lord. Is lying for the Lord still something that we practice in the Mormon church? And that did not go over well with Victor. Well, he started to accuse me. He said, well, if I was going to kill your child, wouldn't you lie as well? And I'm so regret I should have said, shall I take that as a yes?
But they basically acknowledged that they have practiced lying
that's
for the
what
Lord.
They did. Yeah.
That sometimes it's better to lie than to tell the truth.
Yeah.
If you're trying to protect the church and its interests.
Yes,
basically.
But I felt kind of an aggressiveness when they answered me, actually.
Yeah, because that's not fun. Who else wants to share reflections of the actual content?
Yeah, so there were 2 questions that I remember particularly. One was the translation process of the Book of Mormon. I share the view that I thought that it was depicted wrong in what we learn in church. You see pictures of Joseph Smith and Hiram, Oliver Cowdery sitting with a place and this thing, and in fact there was a stone in a hat, and basically the answer was, sometimes we're not in control of what actually the painters do in a way. So they live in separate lives. How people depict things is not actually maybe the church actually wanted to be. So they didn't take full responsibility of it. That was my sense that I got from that. And the second one was about polyandry, and I was very content with that. Actually, they just confirmed that yes, it did happen. And I asked them, I think, if it was a mistake by Joseph Smith, and they said, no, we don't believe that it was a mistake, more in some other wording. But basically they confirmed that it was something that was practiced, and we just had to live with it. But the common theme through all the big questions was that, there's a big book coming out about that, and we're going to, you can dive into that, and we have some links here that you really can get some good answer on that, and we don't have much time to go into the depth of that topic. And looking at the whole meeting, the time we spent on introducing ourselves and hearing about the risk of us going to hell, I guess it was a bit of mismanagement of the time.
And also referring you to future resources. Wasn't the Mountain Meadows Massacre book about to come out? And so they referenced the upcoming Mountain Meadows Massacre book, that it will have the answers for that issue.
A lot of great research was in the pipeline to
Answers are coming, right? Answers are coming. Paringa, what was your impression of the content of the meeting? Any particular questions?
No, I can take a particular question, but the content was that basically all our questions were confirmed. It wasn't anybody saying that we were wrong in our questions. They were all real and they existed, and there were no simple answers to them. Then he of course confirmed that all these things were issues, and there were really no answers. He kind of tweaked a little bit around, and basically also said that we just don't have answers to everything. I still remember that. That was a very common answer when we brought our questions up. Personally, I asked about the Book of Mormon and archaeology, that all civilizations we know have existed on this earth, they have all left traces, and a lot of traces actually. I mean, even very small civilizations, you find traces from them, because you cannot hide. There are things they've used, there are tools, there are wagons or whatever, but there are not a single trace from all the people described in the Book of Mormon.
Nephites, Lamanites, etc.
Yeah. There's nothing. Not a single trace confirming that what's written in the Book of Mormon and the tools they used and the lives they lived, that they ever existed.
And their answer was?
I have to admit, I don't even remember the answer now. I don't. I mean, what can you say? There are no traces. There's nothing.
They spent an awful long time discussing DNA, if you remember. So
yeah.
he went on this theory about how the DNA, the proofs that we have for that DNA actually in the South America come from Asia. He spent a long time going on a theory that, there could be different explanations to that. So that was a long time spent on that topic. That didn't just amount up to anything really, but just that there was a different viewpoint on it.
What about Book of Abraham?
What I recall there is that basically they just said that it's a way of it was a tool of inspiration. It's a classic one, and they also said, I made the comment in the beginning about the Book of Mormon. What was the need for the plates? If it's just going to use a stone, people died for those plates. People were killed, and you said, well, he needed those plates to get source, so they needed to be in the room, and then he could get inspiration from the plates via the stone, so they were needed. That was basically the answer to that.
Can I just say also, they also tried to explain what translation is. And it's nothing to do what we think it is. It's more inspiration and revelation, and so like if you are dead and you will be alive again, that's a translation that you go from one part to something else. But I have to just say one thing more, is that this where were 20 priesthood holders, bishop, and stake president, and all of them told us was sitting there that we were deceived, that they were anti-Mormons literature, that's not true, and so on. And here they are, general authorities and historians telling, you're right. But they are sitting there telling that we were really, really far out space cadets kind of way. And I think that's a very both important to understand that they confirmed what we were really knowledgeable about it. We were organized, and we know what we were talking about, so they couldn't get us like a wave. Wherever the wind goes, the wave goes. So I think that's important. And I think the last part of the Swedish Rescue is very important to discuss as well when we come there.
So anything else you guys want to say about the actual meeting, including how it ended?
Well, my view was that it was a good tone overall. I think it got a bit tension when you pressed him on the polygamy thing, because you had to press Jensen to commit or to say that, yeah, we believe it. So there were a lot of questions back and forth where he avoided. So in that moment, it was a bit tense. And also it was a bit more tense when you talked about the temple experience. How can we know? The paradox is that if you feel that something is bad, then it's not from God. But if you feel that while you're doing church service stuff or ordinances in the church, you feel something's bad, then you should go and pray more about it. It's difficult to manage that. So if you come across something that's bad in life and you feel bad about it, then you know that's from the devil or that's not good for you. But if you feel that same in the temple, then you just need to practice it more and pray about it.
Because you had gone through the temple back when they had the penalties, and it made you feel how, Hans?
Yeah, well, I told the story how I felt the first time I went to the temple. I was terrified. I couldn't sleep that night, and I couldn't get my mind around this, what I have experienced that day, and it was really, really, really tough. And I saw devils, and I saw weird clothings, and nothing to do what I learned about the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I told that experience. I said I didn't feel any good. I said, "This is not good. Get out of here." And I said, "Could you say, Elder Jensen, do you think this is the Spirit of the Lord testifying for me that this is right?" I felt the opposite.
And what did he say?
Well, I have a daughter who had the same experience.
Yeah.
And he said, well, it takes time. You go there again, you go there again, and you go there again. And finally you get it, so probably you will understand it and feel good about it.
And what that really is conditioning. You condition yourself to feel comfortable with something that you naturally feel very uncomfortable with.
But that's what I told him. You can do anything with that principle. You can say, I'm a Nazi, and you try to do it quite a while. You can probably feel very good about it.
Eventually, if you expose yourself to Nazi teachings and behavior over time, you can condition yourself to be okay with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or you can be American president and believe in him. Sorry.
We're not going there. We're not going there today. That is outside the scope of this meeting. Okay. So the meeting ends. Anything else you want to say about the actual meeting? Anybody else? Do you feel like we've covered it?
No, there was one more part. We were preached to again before the meeting
At the end.
ended. Yes.
What'd they say?
The same
if
thing.
you do not live up to everything.
Right.
No, what'd they say?
You have to make a choice now. Either you're in or you're out. Make a decision.
That's how it ended.
That's how.
And how'd that
and
make
don't talk to anybody.
They said that?
Yep.
They said don't talk to anyone.
Yep.
No, they said don't worry your friends and family about these issues. So it's telling you we shouldn't concern our friends and family within the church about these issues. Make up your mind. You either in this or you leave.
And that really does make sense. You think about it, the church had this expense of sending Jensen and Turley here. They met with the problem people. They gave their best answers. And those two responses make perfect sense, which is either A, get back in line and be quiet, or leave. Because we don't want this infection spreading to the entire country. Right? So that makes perfect sense. It's choose now. Your leaders are all here watching you. Your bishops and stake presidents are here. They know where you stand. Make your choice and either get in line and be quiet or get out.
Yes.
Is that how it was?
Choose ye this day.
Say it again.
Choose ye this day.
Who you will serve.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the point before that, this is Kopishki finishing the whole thing. So, we have to break off now. We don't have more time to go through the question. Then Kopishki goes on, and he goes on for another hour on his own.
What does he say?
And he gives the parable about Korihor. He just tells us the Korihor story, and that just was fantastic. Yeah.
No, well, how was it really?
No, but I mean, I talked to some of the people there afterwards, and they were really upset about this ending. Everybody knows about the Korihor story. So basically, we were in that analogy.
Tell us about Korihor, just for those who...
Yeah, so in short, Korihor questioned God and questioned everything, and he died. Yeah,
It was an ignominious death. Is that the right one? Is that the Korihor was the ignominious death?
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you were at the Swedish Rescue meeting. Raise your hand. Okay, so there's about 8 or 9 people here who were actually at the meeting.
There's an interesting person here who was there. Johan, he was actually there as a bishop, right? Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anybody who's in the audience who wants to come up and share any other quick either reactions or insights or important things that we missed? Some of you may be scared to actually be on the camera and talk, but for the 7 or 8 of you who were there, is there anyone who wants to come up and just share any? Okay, would you mind coming up really quick? Anyone who wants to share something, just come up right here and stand in line, and I'll move, and you sit in my chair right here and just share whatever it is you want to add, just so that we get a bit more of a round picture. So sit right there. And yeah, go ahead. What are we missing that you want to add?
One thing that made me
What's your name?
Anders Höglund.
And what was your position at the time? Had you served in callings?
I have been in very many callings as a rådgivare, counselor.
In Bishopric?
Yes, all kinds of, and priesthoods. What I reacted to at the end was, I think it was Marlin Jensen said, "We know all these questions you have, and we know a lot more questions, but we are still faithful and believe." So
And what did you think about that?
then I just thought, you can make yourself sort of, if you have that mindset, you can think you believe anything.
Yeah, Turley made a point that he also talked while going through the questions. He said that, I could make a great career outside the church, but, I know the answers to these questions. I know the questions, and I still believe, and I have no personal gain of just staying within the church and dealing with these things. I could pursue a career outside the church that would be much more beneficial for me. So basically giving that his life would be a testimony of that, the church was true in a way.
It's basically an appeal to authority, which is I have a PhD, I'm really smart, I could go make money doing other things, I know more than you. So if smart PhD me who knows more than you still believes, you can believe too. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, yes.
Okay. And you didn't like that?
No, I still don't.
Okay. All right. Let's give him a hand for participating. Anybody else want to share, or is that... Did we cover it? Is that good enough? The bishop. Does the bishop want to speak? The former bishop? No, he does not want to speak. Okay. That's fine. No problem. Okay. So the meeting was over. What happened then? Who wants to talk about what happened? What was the fallout? Did you all choose? And did you shut up or not? So what did each of you choose?
Well, at the meeting...
Actually, let's just talk about each of your emotional reaction at the end of the meeting. So Hans, what was your emotional reaction, your intellectual reaction at the end of the meeting? And then we'll go to each of you.
First, I'd like to say I was really upset that they took all the time to not answer and discuss the questions that we really, really were prepared to talk about. But I was also happy that I confirmed that the questions were there and they were accurate and they were really serious questions. But I was so upset that they said, you will sit by yourself, as Elder Kopiski said, like in a mountain and look out at the sea, and you and God and the scriptures will solve these problems and these questions. And I mean, that was my and I come home to Birgitta, and she can see that I was really frustrated.
What didn't you like about that?
Because you're not allowed to talk about questions you have. You can only ask questions like, help me to understand how the Book of Mormon will bless my life. Things like that, You don't question things that are hard. Really, what they do say, we don't have any answers to it. So don't ask us because we feel like fools, because we can't answer it. And I'm not happy about that.
Okay. Peringa, what was your intellectual and emotional reaction to the meeting?
Yeah, my feeling was that we have been able to ask these questions. They didn't spend enough time, and I agree to that. But they all confirmed that there were no answers. That made me kind of happy, because if you have been lonely and you question yourself and thought maybe I'm crazy who I even think about these things, and I may be completely wrong, and then they confirm that no, I was not crazy, I was not wrong. All these questions were valid and they had no answers.
So you felt better about your position?
Kind of. I got the confirmation that I was a mentally healthy person who continued to ask these questions.
Right?
Yeah.
And did they persuade you to want to stay in the church and to recover your testimony and to
No,
want to?
not more than what I heard. No, actually, I heard very little from my bishop and from my stake president after this meeting. They didn't put any pressure on me. I have kept a fairly low profile. I'm very open. I don't accept callings. I go to church with my family.
You still do?
I do.
Okay.
I go.
Okay.
I'm still a member.
But leaving the meeting, they did not convince you to keep believing?
No.
Okay.
Not at all. Not at all.
Christina, how about you? What were your reactions after the meeting?
I think my emotions were rather mixed. I agree with you. I was happy for the validation, and I was happy that overall they did not try to lie too much to us. I think that was great. But I sort of felt sorry for ourselves at the same time. I felt sorry for those bishops and stake presidents. How must they feel? And I felt sorry for ourselves, and I sort of felt sorry for Dick Turley and Marlin Jensen as well. I spoke to Marlin Jensen after the meeting because he was asking questions about my mission, because he had heard about this England East mission in the 1970s, and he wanted to know more. And we spoke for some time, and he asked me, so he understood that I was beyond the redemption of the Mormon Church, and he asked me, what do you do now? And I said that, well, I'm a Christian today. And he said, to my enormous surprise, I said, I'm a Christian. And he said, good for you. Good for me, I said to him. What do you mean? Didn't I just hear you say that following anything but the Mormon Church is to follow the devil? And he said, nah, never mind. Good for you. And that...
So he basically admitted that what he had said, that's what I meant by the public and the private Marlin Jensen.
Yeah.
Because he had stood up and told everybody Satan or Mormonism. But then when he's off public, he tells you privately
I'm okay.
that you're okay.
Yeah, he told me. I've met him after that. And
it's not that he's a bad guy. It's just there's public Marlin Jensen and private Marlin Jensen. Private Marlin Jensen is tolerant, is progressive, is open-minded, is universalistic.
Yeah.
But then he switches to public Marlin Jensen, and it's Satan or the Mormon Church.
And that's why I felt sorry for him, you know. He must be caught in a kind of trap.
Yeah.
Because to be two personas like that, and he would never have dared to say that from the pulpit. Never mind that, good for you.
And I had the same experience with Elder Jeff Holland when I met him in private, you know, at a lunch table in Salt Lake City. I'm telling him my doubts and problems. He's like, evolution, you can believe in evolution, that's fine. And LGBT people, we need to treat them better. And reparative therapy is bad. And all your doubts and questions are legitimate. And we're here to help you. And we want you in this church. And within a couple months of that lunch, he gives his Book of Mormon talk in General Conference, where he says, you have to crawl over, under, around the Book of Mormon if you're going to leave the church. That's a very different human than what I experienced one-to-one. And that's how these leaders have to be. Your reactions, Jonathan?
Yeah, so it's pretty much the same. But it had an immediate, so I was happy about the validation of the questions. I knew that the questions were real and the issues were real. But I was also not frustrated, but I realized that it's going to be down to interpretation. There are no clear answers. And I kind of felt sorry for them a bit that they actually knew that there weren't no good answers coming into this meeting. But the immediate impact was that, you know, that evening my wife decided to resign from the church based on the challenge.
Were you there, Eva? You were at the meeting,
yeah.
okay.
And her friend did as well. I resigned a bit later. But I mean, that was the immediate impact of that meeting, that we knew, you know, you're in or you're out. So, okay, then we're out.
So when they make it in or out. And that's why they excommunicate people, because they want to say, get out of here. If you can't toe the line, believe, support the Orthodox viewpoint, get away. Or shut up or get away. But we can't have, you know, anything but that.
So that was my summary and understanding after the meeting, is that I thought it was the purpose of it was to get damage control from a church perspective. They wanted to know who actually was questioning. And I think most of us were confronted by leaders one way or the other.
Yeah, talk about that. So what was your interaction with leaders after the meeting? Who wants to share?
Yes, I was confronted to ask him, are you for or are you against?
By who?
A local leader.
He calls you in?
No, I was meeting him anyway due to that.
Was a bishop?
No, he was the bishop, but not my bishop. But I know he was in the stake.
Another bishop calls you into a meeting.
No, I was there doing some, because we knew each other, we're friends. So
Okay.
I was going by his house, and then he hey, Jonathan, what about these things? Are you for, because he was at this meeting as well, are you for or are you against? And then I said, what do you mean for or against? Well, are you going to talk about this or not? Well, I'm going to continue to ask questions. I don't think, if this is true, I see no problem sharing it with anybody. But he didn't tell me that you need to leave, but he basically wanted to feel me if I was, in or out or for or against. And I also had another friend afterwards confront me and saying, so are you now against the church? And if that would have been the case, he wouldn't spend more time with me. But I kind of said, I'm not against the church, but I have no problem talking about history as I understand it to happen. And that was, I think, the big positive that came from this meeting. Before the meeting, everybody questioned that the history was just made up. But after that, I think they changed their approach more, that they could understand that people had issues with history. Before that, we were, two different worldviews colliding.
It was anti-Mormon literature
yeah,
before.
basically,
Afterwards, it was legitimate history.
Yeah, exactly.
And the result for you was resigning from the church.
Yeah.
Okay, others, how did your membership with the church and relationship with leaders evolve?
I was still a member at the time. I had some emotional attachments to the church, and I was called to the bishop, and we had a nice chat for about an hour. But I knew what he wanted.
What did he want? What did he want?
He came at the end. He said, "I have to say this: either you resign voluntarily, or we have to make a disciplinary council against you." And I said, "Well, as the good Mormon wife I am still a member because my husband doesn't want me to resign." And he said, "Oh, that's good. That's great. Let's forget this." And I and I think that he was pressured from somewhere else to get me out. But my husband's changed. So I was thinking, do I want a disciplinary council? Then I have to, then I can tell them again what they heard. But my husband changed his mind, so shortly after that, I wrote my resign letter.
You resigned?
Yes, I did.
And did your husband resign?
He resigned a couple of years later, I think.
Okay, so you resigned, Jonathan resigned, Christina resigned. Beringa?
I never heard a single word, actually, from either my bishop or from my stake presidency afterwards. So
Okay.
they haven't asked me any questions, anything. I remain, passive member of the church. My wife is still active in the church in all aspects of life, and my children are active in the church with their families. I have not been able to attend my own daughters' and sons' temple weddings, which has been a very sad story for me. Actually, one of my daughters, she begged me to try to get a temple recommend. And of course, I spoke with my bishop, both in Portugal, since we live there, and then my bishop in Sweden, actually. Of course, I cannot lie. That's not possible for me. I cannot lie, not even for that. So I had to wait outside the temple in each single wedding my children go through. And you feel like you are not part, and you feel like you are not okay. That's I have to say, you do. That's been very sort of sad. That's been the hardest thing for me. Otherwise, I'm fine. I go to church with my family very frequently, almost every Sunday. I'm there because when I'm in Sweden, I'm there for my grandchildren. Happy to see them. And actually, this may be very different than for most of you. I'm happy that my children and their families continue to go to church, because I think it's good for young children to have that stability in life, and for the families to have the stability in the life. I just would love the church to be true, but it's not. That's my problem. I have no problems with rules in church. I think that regulations and rules and recommendations are good for people and for families, but I cannot lie to myself. That is my problem.
What keeps you from being concerned that your grandchildren are learning things that aren't true and learning to believe things that aren't true? Is it sort of a utilitarian approach where you're just saying the harm of my grandchildren believing things that aren't true is outweighed by the positive elements of their participation in the church.
Little bit like that, yes.
Is that how it is?
Yes,
I don't mean to
is.
put words in your mouth, but
then that's true. That's true.
You're
But
saying the good they get from it. So why don't you do that? Why don't you just stay in because the good outweighs?
I can't lie to myself. I cannot stand up and have give a class in Sunday school or priesthood and now tell stories which is in the book which are now not true. I just can't. That's impossible for me. I can go to church, I can listen to speeches, and from every single speech you can get something positive out of it. It's not so I have no bad feelings. Sometimes it's hard for me to keep my mouth shut, and sometimes I don't. But in most cases I go there and I listen and I get. You always get to know people and get something positive out of it, and I'm happy to see that my grandchildren and my families in my family have stability in their life. They all know where I stand. We have discussed about that very openly in our family. We can talk about these things.
Your grandkids know where you stand.
Absolutely.
That's important.
We have very open discussions in the family a whole time, very often actually. And I have other members of my family have also very big doubts. And that's very obvious in our discussions. But they also think then that the positive thing outweighs the negative thing, and they don't want to cause problems in their families.
Christina and Jonathan, how does it feel to know that you were sort of given the ultimatum of in and out, but Peringa was just allowed to continue? Or do you guys feel angry about that? Do you feel jealous? Are you no? Hold the microphone, because you two were told in or out, but he was left alone. That's not consistent.
No, but maybe it depends on the attitude. I think that Peringa, he still supports the church in a way. In a way, you do. And I did not the same way. And then I think in a way they had the right to kick me out. I openly said this is not true. I openly talked to people. And I was openly confessing another faith.
And Peringa, you've kept it more to yourself. You haven't been speaking openly outside of your family. Even the microphone, if you don't mind. Have you kept it a little bit more?
I bring up questions sometimes in Sunday school, and so I do. I don't do that in a provocative way, and I do not go around and talk to people in general. Certainly our friends know where I stand, and some of them have actually moved away from me, very obviously. I can feel that and see that. I'm not invited any longer because they see me as a risk factor. I mean, I was a bishop for 7 years. People respected me a lot for what I've done for the church. And suddenly I choose to take a step outside in a way, even if I am not officially left the church. I can feel they are scared for being with me or for their relatives being with me, even if I'm not very outspoken. But I have no problem at all to take up a discussion, and I do.
Did you want to, Jonathan, do you want to share?
Yeah, I just have a few comments. So I never felt that they basically told me you need to leave, but I got that from the meeting. So, and also I realized that I couldn't stand for the church anymore. But I've actually heard from some friends, one that's not a member of the church, that his wife is a member of the church, and he talked to a person in Göteborg, and when he mentioned that he knew me, they commented, well, he's an anti-Mormon these days. That was the comment that he was told. So I guess I've been quite vocal in the beginning, especially because I just wanted to make clear that my view was that the church had whitewashed the history, and that they didn't have an honest version of the history. But they've amended that now, I think. So I was quite vocal in the beginning online, especially, that I, trying to make points to people understand what's really happened in the past. But I think now everybody, due to the essays and the information is available for those, and people don't question the difficult aspects the same way they did.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Years back.
Okay, so I'm going to we have over 150 people joining us live right now in the United States and across the world. I want to thank everyone who's joining us live. I've got this live stream on my little phone. So if any of you want to ask questions of the audience, I'm inviting you now to go ahead and post those as comments, and I'll try and use those with the audience so that we can have some interaction with the live audience. Hans, why don't you go ahead and tell us how your membership played out and your interaction with your leaders post the Swedish Rescue meeting itself. So the meeting ends. did you meet with leaders after that?
The meeting ends, and we after that organized the Swedish Mormon Stories. And
what was that? What was Swedish Mormon Stories?
We organized that of those the group who was at the Swedish Rescue, and
was that a Facebook group that was created?
Yes.
You created a Facebook group called Sweden Mormon Stories.
Yes.
And what was the purpose of that?
There was the purpose that because you were not allowed to speak and ask questions in the church, you should have a safe place to ask your own questions and not be worried about it, and you can comment it. And so that's where it started to grow a lot.
And that would have been in 2011.
Yeah.
We would have created all the 75, 100 different Mormon Stories groups on Facebook across the world.
Yeah.
And put a centralized directory for those groups on the Mormon Stories page. And so you guys created that in 2011.
Yeah.
And how was that group used by the Swedish saints, Swedish Mormon Stories listeners?
The one who knows about it joined it, and Jonas Baptist and his wife were very good missionaries there to help to. We call it the second harvest.
Okay, tell the story of the second harvest, because people are laughing. But what was that? What was the first harvest? What was the second harvest?
Well, when I had about 2 weeks on my mission, together with my twin brother, we were together for 6 weeks serving. And Elder Hinckley then was an apostle.
President Gordon B. Hinckley.
Yeah, he visited Birmingham, and we had a meeting with the missionaries. And when he was talking and teaching us, he stopped and looked at us. We are sitting in the front like you Norwegians there, and said, "You are the twins from Sweden, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, we agree." And he said that Sweden had a harvest. A lot of members come in. The blood of Israel is running in the Swedes, and a lot of them converted and moved to America. And now we know there will be a second harvest. And he said it took a glass of water. There's nothing happening really in the Scandinavian countries. Had Norway get something there, and in Sweden, just nothing happened. But there will be a second harvest. And I give you the role to go home and prepare and teach about this. And we were so happy, Wow, we're going to be the part of the second harvest. And because there's still the blood of Israel in the Swedes. So
they promised from the 70s, they promised a second harvest where Swedes would flood into the church.
They
Is that
will
right?
flood into the church. No one will be inactive, and they will be fantastic. And we need more bishops and stakes, and there will be a wonderful way to live in the church.
And so you guys, Swedes have been waiting for that second harvest since the 70s, right?
Yeah, we've been preaching it. They come like the spring comes, when the flowers started to come up, and every 10th year it started again, and people, we heard about the second harvest. Maybe this is the time. And
maybe this is the decade. Maybe the 70s, maybe the 80s is the decade of the second harvest. Maybe the 90s, right?
And one of the apostles, Elder Renland, was here. Renland, in the spring, and said the second harvest is not ended. It starts. It's the best time ever in Sweden. And I agree. We have never been so many the Mormon Stories in Sweden as we are now.
For you, the second harvest is the growth of people leaving the Mormon Church in Sweden.
I mean,
so talk about that. So, what after the Swedish Rescue? What has happened to the membership, the Mormon membership in Sweden? Do we know?
I don't think we really know. I just know that in my old ward, I was the bishop. There is only about 50 active now, and we used to be 120 or so. And
so your ward is less than half of the active members that it used to be.
Yes.
Others of you have reflections on the growth or the shrinkage of the church since the Swedish Rescue?
I mean, more or less.
Stockholm, you guys are here. You guys know. Is the church growing, shrinking?
My view is that there, we're quite a few people that has left, or if we haven't left, there are a lot of more people that are not willing to spend as much time or commitment within the church. So I would say, but I don't know the figures, but I would say that probably maybe 20%
Of what?
of the total membership in the church. Is probably
900,000.
Probably 20% of all the members that have been active are not active anymore in one way, shape, or form.
So you're saying the church has lost about 20% of its membership in Sweden since the Swedish Rescue?
I did a calculation. I think about 1,000 people are left.
Because at the max of membership in Sweden, it would have been what, about 10,000 people?
9,000 or something.
9,000, and you're saying about 1,000 have left since then.
What I mean left is that they also could be less active.
Less active.
But a lot of them are also
resigning, less active, or attending but not really believing, probably not paying their tithing.
But on that note, I mean, those 10,000. On that note, those 10,000 people, not all of them are active from the start. So I would say, how many active have there been? 5,000 in Sweden?
4 or 5,000.
4,000 that active, and I would say maybe 1,000 of those are not as active as they were before.
But there is something very special, though, is that Stockholm and Västerhaninge has the Swedish temple, and a lot of older people move up to be close to the temple to serve here. So they are growing here. Not because of baptism, but people moving in. And we got less people in Malmö and Gothenburg and in Norrland.
But we're just guessing. I mean, we do know. But what we do know is that a lot of friends and acquaintances are not active anymore. That's what we know. But we don't know, if they have a lot of baptisms. I don't know anything about that.
Okay, were you going to say something, Peringa?
Yeah, I just like to say that I do agree with you. First of all, we just don't know, and I think there's an impact on some wards and no impact at all on some others. But it certainly affected individuals everywhere.
So we're thinking there's around 4,000 to 5,000 active Swedish members of the church by this point. We're estimating, and that the church probably lost a good 1,000, a good 20% of their active membership as a result of the Swedish Rescue and the activities that have followed.
No, not because of the Swedish Rescue, because the church has not been honest telling the story. And when people find out that, they take a decision. They can't trust the church because they're not being honest.
How many stakes are in Sweden now?
There's 4 of them.
4 of them. Have they closed any stakes?
No, not yet.
And missions? How many missions are in Sweden?
There is 1 mission.
And do you get a sense that missionaries are baptizing a lot of new people?
Well, there is a few people coming from Africa and Arabic country. They are baptizing.
So the missionaries would target people from other developing countries. They're probably not baptizing a lot of Swedes.
No, they don't.
They don't baptize a lot of Swedes.
That's been the case for decades. I mean, yeah.
I mean, there is a broader trend in Western Europe, Scotland, England, Germany, even Russia, where the church is contracting. In all those countries, it's shrinking. So while in the United States, growth has slowed now to about 1%, and what drives the 1% growth in the United States is birth rate, because Mormons on average have three children per family, and so that extra third person allows them to replace death, right, and have very, very small growth. But the church in the United States is at about 1% or less growth. And in Western Europe, it's actually shrinking. Western Europe is shrinking in the Mormon church.
I believe that we cannot give all the credit to the Swedish Rescue. I believe that the church as an organization is a 19th century culture thing. So many churches are shrinking. It's the new times. We organize ourselves in different ways than the way the church is organized. So it's kind of outlived itself, maybe.
I wouldn't say that the people have left or been active due to Mormon stories. I don't see it that way at all, actually. I see that people have been helped and felt whole in a way and accepted due to Mormon stories. The information on internet and other things cannot no longer prevent people from the truth. And when they start to doubt, they start to search information, they find out that something is wrong here, and then you start to question yourself. But due to the Mormon stories, they get the confirmation that they are okay, they're whole. And I think that's the big thing here. Very, very positive.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So people find their doubts on their own, and they use Mormon stories to help them. But one thing that I've noticed, so I live my life around families that are active members. A lot of my good friends are still active, and they're great people. A lot of Mormons are great people still, of course. But what I found with the church is that they're more liberal now in their approach to us. So I think there's been a transition in the way they view people that leave, and I think that's a positive. You can actually, it's not as tense anymore, and they're more accepting, and they're more understanding, and they're more compassion and more patience with us that don't believe anymore. Whereas in the beginning it was more, that we were following the dark side of the force. Now we're all, I don't know what we are.
So for those who are posting questions, the way the interface works on my iPhone, it only lists the first 3 lines of your question. So some of you are writing longer questions or statements that I can't read. So if you want to repost what you were asking, just make sure and make it really short. But we have had a few questions from our listeners. One person writes, have any family members or the members of the church in Sweden distanced themselves from you since leaving the church? So how are family members and former ward members or community members treating you since you've stopped believing and or attending? Anybody want to take that?
I can answer from my point of view. No family members. We have a very good relationship in my family, and everybody knows where I stand, and we have good discussion about this. I have had a feeling that our members in at least my previous ward, where I was a bishop, who have distanced themselves from me. Yes.
I think it comes down to if you're a liberal Mormon, if you're a hardcore Mormon, that's different for different families. So I'm good in my situation. I do know that my parents, especially my mother, she mourns, so she puts my name in the temple probably every week. Yeah.
But she still talks to you, and you still have a relationship.
Yeah, we don't talk about religion that much, but yeah, we have no issues with that. But it is a big elephant in the room sometimes. We tend to avoid certain topics because it's inflammatory. So out of respect to each other, we try to avoid. Well, we have a big thing now soon that one of my sister's children are going to get baptized, and we have made a stance in our family that we will not support. We don't want to support that, so we won't go to baptisms due to that we feel that it's wrong to baptize a person 8 years of age.
Pass that mic to Jonathan really quick, and then I'm going to come to you. But that's very different. So Peringa, he attends, he sometimes speaks up, and he's being very supportive. You're saying that for you, you don't even feel good about attending a baptism because you feel like it's implicitly showing support, and you are opposed to people getting baptized, or what?
No, I just think it's dead wrong that you baptize an 8-year-old and have them commit to those commitments at that age. So principally, I'm just against that. I can't stand there and support that. That's the way I view it.
And how does your family feel when you guys just don't show up?
So we don't actually, I haven't told them that, but we don't show up. And I guess they realize it's because of that. But I don't want to, it's important for them, and we just hope they have a nice birthday, and we just don't show up on those. But I'm not the similar problem with a blessing, for instance, because they need a name one way, shape, or form. So I can go on a blessing, I think. But when it comes to baptism at age of 8, I think it's wrong. So principally, I'm not as positive to the church as you might be. My main issues with the church is the time it consumes from the family. It eats them up, and it's also the shame and the blame that you put on children. I don't think that's good for you. But I can agree to some principles, but on average, my view is that people are better without the church. But having a person live their whole life in the church is a different story, because that could be painful. So I don't want to disturb my parents, for instance. I think they're actually better off at this age to stick around in the church than leaving. But for anybody that is experiencing it or exploring it, I hope they can find peace elsewhere.
Okay. We have several people writing in. Did you want to, Hans, were you going to say something about how family and ward members and leaders have treated you and Brigitte?
Well, the leaders, after this been quiet. I only met Elder Jensen on my own initiative, but Rasband and the other ones is just quiet, nothing. But our immediate family, my own sons and daughters, my wife, are quite happy. All of us have left the church, so we don't have any issues there. But my own family with my brothers, that I think 2 of them, 50% of my brothers are, well, we don't have any really good relationships anymore.
Because 2 are believing and 2 have left.
2 of them, 2 are believing, 2 are left, yeah. And I have really good support from one of my brothers and his family, and some of them are here today. Yeah.
So it's kind of split your family in half.
Yes. It's hard to meet again.
What's that like to have your family split over the church?
Well,
how does that make you feel?
The feeling is that
you've lost touch with your nieces and nephews, I'm assuming.
Yes.
And those 2 brothers that you
Yes.
were close to.
Because I think the family should be family because we are brothers and sisters and not depending the church or not. So, but this is, I mean, for them, and maybe it was for me as well, the church is more important than the family. So if you choose something, you choose the church, and don't involve with those who have doubts. And that's tough, you know, because like my twin brother, we grown up together. We spend so much time together. Sometimes we even have the same girlfriend. But he didn't know that.
You were always the sketchy one.
But now it's hard. We can't even talk about it, you know, because I'm responsible for the whole Swedish 1,000 people leaving, and he knows that I will stand in front of Jesus the Christ, and he will destroy my life there, and I will be responsible for it. So, well, that's his way to look at it. And when now I've written a book, is even less chance to have a discussion or talk.
He's mad at you for writing the book.
Yeah, I mean, it says Hans Mattsson on it, and the Mattsson name should be honored, you know.
So, Peringa, whether it was your moving comments about not being able to attend your own daughter's, weddings in the temple, or Jonathan, you basically saying that these important family events, you don't feel like you're able to attend and celebrate along with your other family members, or Hans, you saying your family's literally split in half, where half of the brothers don't really have much communication with the other brothers, and all the nieces and nephews are sort of cut off from their uncles, and vice versa. I'm guessing your believing brothers aren't as close to your children and to the children of your brother who is left. And what that speaks to is how, on the one hand, the Mormon Church says family is the most important thing. Isn't it about family? Family, it's about time. On the other hand, how that plays out is that religion ends up fracturing and weakening, and in some cases destroying the family. And what would it be like if the church were to take a change and to say family first? Even if you're a believer, you love your siblings that have lost their faith. You be an uncle or an aunt to your nephews and nieces. Never let the church come between family relationships. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the Mormon Church would take that stance? Yes. Whereas, as it is now, this thing that's supposed to be what strengthens and unites families becomes this massive burden to fraction families and to alienate people from each other.
But for us who are converts, it's the other side. We can reconnect better to our siblings.
You're reuniting with your never Mormon siblings and family members for the first time.
My siblings have read the book, and we've started to discuss those years and the church with my siblings in a quite new way, and that's great.
Were you going to say something, Jonathan?
Well, in my situation, I feel that I think it comes down to each family, how they are. So I would say that I'm just as close to my family still, even though we believe different things. But every time you believe something different from another person that's significant, it creates distance in some aspects of life. But it's always with all religions and all whatever ideas, it's how you interpret and how you decide to choose to follow those rules. So I think the church can be a divider if you want to go hardcore, but it could also, you could manage it if you're more liberal in your viewpoint. So
for those who are leaders in the church or liberals or progressives, please change how you approach religion and make sure that you as a believer, as an active member, are going to do everything you can to not let religion come between family members. Juliet says church should not be more important than family. Really quickly, Matt wants to know if your lives have gotten considerably worse or better since leaving the church. Give a really brief answer. So, Jonathan?
Well, I'm much happier because I don't live with an inner conflict these days.
So you're happier? Your
Yes.
marriage, your children?
We're good. We left together, so I think that helped. Yeah,
And
and
are
it's
your
just
children-
one extra day a week also makes a difference to
You-
improve life.
And that's better? You like having the extra Sunday?
An extra day a week is always good.
Income, the 10%?
Well, never you spend those 10% on other things, I think. But it's good to not to be able to support something that you don't feel comfortable with. So just peace of mind is my best outcome of all of this.
And are your children thriving or are they falling apart as humans?
Well, it depends who you ask, but I think they're doing okay.
You don't feel like your children are lesser for your family having left the church?
No, I think we're doing okay.
Okay to the United States means not so good.
No, we're good. We're great. Come and visit us.
Because they're okay. I don't want my kids to be okay.
No, but
I want my kids to be fabulous.
No, but we're a happy family, and my children are happy. I mean, especially my oldest son. He's an atheist, and he could never feel at home or at peace at church. So he was really happy when we left the church. We have one episode when we went to visit a blessing, and we were sitting there, and his younger brother asked, "Do I need to take the sacrament?" And my oldest son told him, "No, it's just bread and water, just like in prison."
Oh. We're not supposed to laugh at that. How are your children, Christina? How's your marriage? How's your children? How's your mental health? How's your marriage? How's your children?
I was going to comment on my marriage, actually. I think that, where's my husband? Oh, fine. I think that our marriage is better because now we are equal partners. As before, he is the head of the family. I am supposed to be the follower, but now we're equals. And I think he's been really great to accept that.
All right, and your children, you have a child who works. Can I say, they have some pretty cool jobs, right? What do your kids do for a living?
Now we have one at the European Union in Brussels and one in Google in Dublin.
One who works in Google in Dublin. Mm-hmm. That's I wish I worked for Google. So, that's pretty impressive. So they're not.
Yeah. No, they're
thriving.
Yeah, yes, they are. But it was hard in the beginning because they all turned against me. That was real hard because it's the children that are supposed to object and to make rebellion, and now their 53-year-old mother
was rebelling.
Yeah. They said, "You are the teenager," but we are okay now. So it was some real tough years.
For several years, they remained faithful, but then what happened?
Yeah, well, I think my husband was first. He was great after a couple of years or so, maybe more. He read, for instance, Grant Palmer's book, and he gathered the children and he said, "Now I understand. Mother has more on her feet, as we say in Swedish. She has reasons for what she says and believes, and we ought to respect her for that."
That's what your husband said.
Yes.
And then what happened to him and them?
I can't remember actually.
But they left. They eventually.
Yeah, he left. But he had the same problem as Birgitta. He was employed by the church.
Oh.
So there were some other problems. But I think it was great. But there were some really lonely years.
And then eventually he left and your children left.
Yes.
And now the family's united.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right.
Thank you.
Beringa, how about your marriage and your mental health and your children?
Yeah, my mental health is fine. I feel good about myself because I know I've been honest to myself. That is very, very important to me. I cannot lie to myself. And has no impact on my marriage. I think we have a very good relationship.
You're in a mixed faith marriage. You're in a mixed faith, so your wife is still a believing, and you're able to navigate a marriage where you don't believe, but she
I
does.
Think so. I feel very well respected for my standpoints and my questions and my issues, and I try to respect her as well, even if I try sometimes to convince her a little bit that there are some strange things going on here, and she listens to me. She's sitting over there. She listens to me, and we have good discussions about it.
Is that? Oh, okay.
Oh. And
blessings for you for being here and being supportive of your husband.
Yeah. And that,
For those who didn't hear, tell me your name. Agneta says that her husband says to her that she has her own church within the church.
yeah, that's true.
And you won't be on the camera, but what does he mean by that?
I think that he thinks that I interpret things differently than the church do, that I interpret the scriptures differently, that I interpret them the way I want them to be interpreted, not the way the church interprets them. But I'm happy in the church. I'm free in the church. I actually feel free in the church, which I feel that very many members don't. I feel that they are in bondage. I think it's slavery. But I don't. I feel free because I know Christ. And he is my light, not the church. Christ is my light. And or the church is a tool to get to know Christ. And if you don't get to know Christ through the church, then skip the church.
But having a apostate husband, how do you deal with that?
Well, we have very interesting discussions. And not only him and me, but also the whole family. You know, you talk about the second harvest. I think this is a second harvest. I think this is what it is. This is purifying. And, I'm not protecting anything. There's nothing to protect here. I'm not protecting the church. Christ doesn't need to be protected.
Whoa.
He stands for himself.
Wow.
And the church doesn't need to be protected. It only needs to tell the truth. And I also seek the truth, but I can live with. I study human mechanisms, and I can understand why the church does what it does. I can understand why Elder Jensen comes and speaks the way he does, officially. I can understand all those things, and I can understand the fear, because fear is what drives it. But I refuse to live by fear.
And how have you kept from looking down and disrespecting your husband for having different beliefs than you? What's kept your marriage strong and your respect for him when he lost those beliefs?
Ooh.
Or do you not still?
I would. He is very easy to respect.
Why?
Because he stands for what he believes in. And to me, that's much more important than believing what I believe. It's important that he is true to himself. And that he allows me to be true to me, myself. And that's what he does. And he's definitely worthy of my respect and everybody else's. And I think that's why people leave him alone. Because he's an authority in himself.
So for you, it's more important that he is a man of integrity than that he believe as you.
Much more important.
And for you, it's more important that he be loved and respected than that he agree with you.
Absolutely.
And that he respects you.
Yes. Which he has had a
Someone wants to clap. Do you guys want to clap at that? Yeah, what an example. What an example you are. What if believers all over the Mormon Church and other Orthodox religious traditions decided that they were going to respect integrity over agreement?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's beautiful. That was very powerful. Okay, and your kids, are your kids okay?
They're wonderful. We have wonderful discussions at home. Everybody knows what he believes in and stands for, and everybody knows what I believe in. And even my children say I have my own church within the church. But
yeah. But that's so valuable that in your home, each of you can represent your own viewpoint.
Sure.
And then the kids are left to decide what they want to believe.
Yes.
Instead of you trying to keep him from talking to the kids and you being mad that she's talking to the kids and your kids become footballs in a war of the parents battling each other. Instead, it's just each parent shares what they believe and the kids can learn and make their own decisions. That's a beautiful model for mixed faith families that I want to bring you guys on Mormon Stories and tell that story. But thank you. That's beautiful. Let's give her a round of applause. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Well, my experience of all members of the church during my life and on my mission is that there are as many Mormon churches as there are Mormons. I would say that all members of the church interpret the gospel in different ways. So that's why all people live in different ways. So, and I think the church leaves leeway for interpretation to some respect. They're not, you can interpret everything. So there would be as many. I would say my mom lives a special way of religion, my father another one, and friends differently. So there are as many different viewpoints of Mormonism as there are members, I think.
Beautiful. Anything else you want to say, Peringer? Is that good?
No, I appreciate Agneta for what you said, and but there is no doubt that, for instance, our two youngest children are no longer active in the church because of me. I mean, I think if we would have been active together, that would maybe have had a different situation. They have chosen to kind of glide away from the church, if I say so. But the others are active and their families are active.
Some kids remain, some kids have left.
Yeah,
okay.
True.
All right. Hans, is there anything you wanted to say in closing? Just
we are quite happy, Birgitta and I, and we love our kids and grandkids, and they are quite happy, and they enjoy an extra day, and they prioritize their family now, and they have at least the chance to do it.
So your family's unified, and your kids are doing okay?
Yeah, doing fantastic good.
And how's your marriage to Birgitta?
Oh, you don't know. It's still a dance on roses.
Okay.
I just want to close by this. The extra day is not the key thing here. I think what this reflects is if you have peace of mind, you become happy. And nobody is happy living with a conflict within themselves. I think that was my takeaway. So, that I can reconcile with their way, integrity. I think anybody that can live with integrity is at peace. And I think anybody who lives in a situation where they have to compromise about values, when they have to support things that maybe not agree with, that creates conflict within themselves. And in the long run, you have to balance things out, but it usually doesn't make people feel that good. So that's obviously why I'm happier now than I was before.
Beautiful. Okay. So really quickly, many of you in the audience are asking about Hans and Birgitta. They're asking whether they've resigned. They're asking about your second anointing, which you did come out. Okay, so I'm going to plug the books really quick as we close. So they're one of the main reasons we came to Sweden was to promote Hans and Birgitta's new book. So I can't read. What does that say? Will you read the title in Swedish, Hans, really quickly? To the microphone, please.
Sökte sanning, fann tvivel.
And what does that mean?
It means you was seeking the truth, but you found doubts.
Okay, so this is a new book. This is your autobiography. Christina, you helped him write this. Is that right? You wrote it. So you interviewed Hans, and then you wrote it. And Birgitta. Birgitta's words are in here as well.
I interviewed both of them for hours and hours.
She interviewed Hans and Birgitta for hours, wrote this book, and then, was it Jean Bodie who translated the book?
We actually have 4 people helping us with that.
Who was that?
Jim Bodie and her friend Harv was the one who put the right words.
Which camera am I looking at, Travis? Okay, so this is the English version of the book, Truth Seeking, Hans Mattsson with Christina Henke. And it talks about Hans's story, Birgitta's story. And in it, Hans revealed for the first time that he did experience the second anointing, just like Tom Phillips. And a lot of people are asking about that. So what I want to say in close is a couple things. Go right now and buy this book in Swedish or in English. Go buy it and go to Amazon and do a positive review of the book. The more people that do positive reviews of this book, the more it's going to get out there, be known, and be shared. This is an amazing book which chronicles a lot of the story that we've told. This needs to get out there. All of Europe needs to read it. All the United States needs to read it. Latin America, Asia, Africa. Am I forgetting it? Well, Eastern Europe.
Australia.
America, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand. Everybody needs to read this book. So the way that the rest of this event is going to go, for those joining us live, we're going to take a break. What's the cultural little get-together we're about to do right now with coffee out in the... What's it called?
Fika.
Tell us what the fika tradition is.
Fika is a wonderful time where you can take a cup of coffee and some cinnamon rolls, and you sit down and you express yourself with different feelings, and that's fika.
So we're doing a fika right now, which means we're going to stop the live stream, but don't go away. At what time? At what time here? Are we going to resume again? What's that? at 4:15 here,
30 minutes.
which is what time in Utah? In a half hour? In a half hour to 45 minutes from now, we're going to start up a second session. And in the second session, we're going to have members of the audience come up and sort of give their experiences or their stories or their testimony. Well, I want to hear from Norway. I want to hear from Finland. I want to hear from, who am I forgetting? Ireland, Denmark. We want to hear from you. We're going to have people share their testimonies. So we're going to stop the feed, but we'll start it again. And we're going to have a testimony meeting or experience sharing. Then tomorrow we're going to come back. I'm going to present some stuff. Jeremy Runnels is going to present some stuff. And then we're going to end with an interview of Hans and Brigitte, where we're going to ask them about the second anointing. We're going to ask them about their experience, what's happened since then. And we're going to get Hans and Brigitte for the first time in video, sharing more about their personal story. Is that okay? So is there anything I'm forgetting before we close? Okay, then I just want to can we thank our panel for telling us their stories? Jonathan, Christina, Peringa, and Hans, thank you for being a part of our panel. Thank you, audience, for being a part of this experience. Please share this on your walls. Let everybody know that in about 30 to 45 minutes, we're going to continue. We'll have as many people as possible tuning in. And then please join us tomorrow for the closing parts of this wonderful conference in Sweden, celebrating the Swedish people, the Scandinavian people, the Swedish Rescue, and of course, Hans's book, Truth Seeking, which all of you need to buy and read and do a positive review on Amazon. Thanks to everyone who helped us technically. And let's have a fika now, and we'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much, everybody.